Do you remember the wild, wacky, and wonderfully weird world of Crashbox? If you do, then you're probably one of the lucky kids who had HBO Family growing up. Crashbox was unlike any other educational show. It blended stop-motion animation, quirky characters, and brain-challenging games into one unforgettable experience. Whether you loved the math game guy or got creeped out by revolting slob, this show made learning actually fun and kind of chaotic. Crashbox is an educational children's television series that premiered on HBO Family in 1999. It was produced by Cuppa Coffee Studios and Planet Grande Pictures using a unique blend of stop-motion animation and mixed media. The show features a collection of fast-paced short segments designed to challenge kids' brains with puzzles, math problems, vocabulary games, history facts, and critical thinking exercises. Each episode is presented as if it takes place inside a computer brain, with a host of eccentric characters guiding viewers through various mental challenges. The show ran for 52 episodes and gained a cult following for its creative visuals and unconventional style. The segments in Crashbox were as diverse as they were memorable. Games like Distraction News tested attention to detail while delivering hilarious fake news reports, and Dirty Pictures challenged viewers to guess historical figures from messy, animated clues. One of the most iconic segments, The Revolting Slob, taught vocabulary through the antics of a grotesque yet oddly lovable character. Other segments like Haunted House Party, Captain Bones, Shasht, and Here We Are introduced kids to subjects like literature, logic, math, and sound recognition in ways that were both engaging and bizarre. The show's fast pace and unique art style helped it stand out from other educational programming of its time. Despite ending production in the early 2000s, Crashbox continued to air on HBO Family for years, earning it a nostalgic legacy among those who grew up watching it. If you remember Crashbox, then why not Crashboxers? This was the more contemporary adult reboot of the series that was first pitched in 2013. However, it failed miserably after attempts to greenlight a total of 110 episodes for the series. Crashboxers was intended to bring the quirky, brain-teasing charm of the original series to an older audience, with edgier humor, more complex puzzles, and satirical takes on adult life. The reboot aimed to blend nostalgia with new content, targeting millennials who grew up on Crashbox but were now facing the stresses of adulthood. Despite the creative ambition, the project struggled from the start. Early concept footage was met with mixed reactions, with many fans of the original unsure about the tone shift. Networks were hesitant to invest in such an unconventional revival, and the show's exaggerated goal of producing 110 episodes became a major hurdle. Ultimately, without strong backing or a solid fanbase response, Crashboxers was shelved before it ever made it to air. When early concept art and leaked footage of Crashboxers surfaced online, many longtime fans were shocked by the drastic redesigns of their favorite characters. The once whimsical, quirky figures from the original show were reimagined with exaggerated, often grotesque adult features, some with overly edgy or inappropriate elements that didn't sit well with viewers. Comment sections across forums, YouTube uploads, and animation blogs lit up with criticism. Here are a few examples of what commenters had to say. Why does Captain Bones look like he just walked out of a bad Vegas hangover? This is nightmare fuel. They turned the slob into a parody of a frat bro with a beer belly and piercings. What happened to educational TV? Dirty Pictures? More like dirty jokes. This reboot looks like it's trying too hard to be adult and just ends up being cringe. Here We Are is now some weird club DJ with headphones and a bad attitude? This ain't it. Crashbox was chaotic but charming. This is just uncomfortable. The backlash against the character redesigns played a big role in the project's downfall. Fans felt the reboot lost the heart and spirit of the original, replacing it with a forced, inappropriate tone that clashed with what made Crashbox memorable in the first place. At the time Crashboxers was pitched, the staff at Curious Pictures were already busy writing new episodes for what would become their final project, the educational children's series, Team Umizoomi. During that time, as Team Umizoomi was nearing the end of its production, some of the producers at Curious Pictures began to entertain a bold idea to greenlight a reboot of Crashbox, but this time for grown modern audiences. The thought was to recapture the original show's cult status and give it a sharp, satirical twist aimed at millennials and Gen Z. In one recorded production meeting from early 2013, producer Mark Langley pitched the concept. You guys remember Crashbox, right? I mean, it was bizarre, loud, and kind of gross, but kids loved it. Imagine if we brought that energy back, but make it for adults. We call it Crashboxers. More irreverent, more real, still smart, but edgier. Jennifer Toomey, a senior writer for Team Umizoomi, chimed in cautiously. I mean, I hear what you're saying, but we're still in the middle of wrapping season 4 of Team Umizoomi. We've got 2 scripts left, the animation team's juggling the final episodes, and the music cues still need approval. Yeah, totally. I'm not saying stop production, just thinking forward. Once Umizoomi wraps, we shift gears. Maybe we use a hybrid of the old Crashbox style with some new tech, more live-action inserts, meta commentary, maybe even poke fun at how overworked our brains are now. Jennifer, I'm just not sure the tone will match. Crashbox worked because it was weird and educational. We're already squeezing our resources with Umizoomi's final run. Plus, those educational beats were tightly reviewed by Nickelodeon's Standards Board. HBO was wild back in the day, but would they even touch something like this now? Langley, it wouldn't be for HBO Kids. We're pitching to late-night blocks or maybe a streaming service. Adult Swim vibes. We get animators from the old team, let them go nuts. Have you seen what our animators are working on right now? Gio's hat alone took 2 weeks of modeling and revisions. We can't just throw together Crashboxers while finishing a math-based musical adventure for preschoolers. But that's the beauty of it. We go from counting shapes to dissecting adult life. It's like poetic contrast. Or it's chaotic and unfocused. Let us finish Umizoomi first. Then we talk, with a real pitch deck, with a real tone plan. The conversation highlighted the internal tension between finishing one beloved kids' show and the ambition of launching a nostalgic, risky reboot. While curiosity lingered, the timing and tone never quite aligned. As it turns out, the staff at Curious Pictures were actually wrapping up Season 2 of Team Umizoomi at the time of the Crashboxers pitch, not Season 4 as originally believed. This mix-up later became a small point of confusion among fans and animation historians reviewing the studio's final years. Okay, I need to correct myself from earlier. We're not finishing Season 4, we're just wrapping Season 2 of Umizoomi. My brain's fried. Yeah, I was about to say, I'm still sketching out that big park sequence with Millie and the monkey bars. That's definitely Season 2 stuff. Even better. That means we have more time to line up Crashboxers once this season wraps. We can start pulling concept art before Season 3 kicks off. Wait, hold on. You're seriously talking about rebooting Crashbox, but for adults? Like, how adult are we talking? I'm thinking late-night variety show vibes. Edgy segments, mental games, but make it satirical. Like, imagine if Dirty Pictures was about meme culture and memory burnout. Okay, but how do you balance that tone? Because if it's too weird, we'll alienate the nostalgia crowd. If it's too tame, it won't stand out. And don't forget, we'd need a whole new soundboard. The original Crashbox was layered like a fever dream. No way we reuse that without a full redesign. Mark, that's why we reimagine everything. Keep the style messy and mixed media, but throw in modern themes. Workplace burnout, social media overload, adulting nightmares. Sounds like a stress dream. It kinda does. Let's just finish Season 2 before we mentally jump into this fever swamp. Then we'll take a serious look at what a reboot like that would even mean. Fine, but I'm keeping my sketchpad open. Okay, but here's the honest, fired-up take. Are you kidding me with this whole conversation? They were in the middle of Team Umizoomi, a sweet, carefully structured show that actually helped little kids learn real math. And they seriously thought, Hey, let's pivot from counting with robots to adult gross-out humor and ironic satire. Crashbox was chaotic genius for kids. It had charm, it had grit, but it knew its lane. Now they wanted to slap on some modern adult humor, scribble weird redesigns of beloved characters, and throw it on a streaming platform like, that's enough to make a good show? No. It was tone-deaf, poorly timed, and a total misread of what made Crashbox special in the first place. The staff was already stressed, overbooked, and working with kid-safe standards, and now someone wanted to turn that entire legacy into a jumbled, that crass reboot before they even finished season 2 of Umizoomi. The whole idea was a mess, and honestly, it deserved to fail if that was the direction they were headed. Let's continue. Around that time, the Curious Pictures team made a bold move, splitting into 2 working groups. One would continue production from Team Umizoomi's late season 2 into early season 3. The other would dedicate themselves to the Crashbox reboot pitch. Here's how that went down. All right, listen up. We've got to divide and conquer. Production deadlines are coming fast, and the higher-ups want Crashboxers at least ready for a fall presentation. Wait, so you're saying half of us go full Umizoomi and the rest jump ship to reboot Crashbox? Not jump ship, just switch lanes. A few of us will focus on the pilot pitch, get character redesigns started, build out updated segment ideas, and pull whatever edgy flair we can manage. Okay, but how edgy are we really going? Because last time we talked about this, someone mentioned turning Slob Brain into a podcast bro. We did test that voice. It sounded like he was selling crypto. David, you're staying with Umizoomi. We need your hands on that Umi alarm sequence for episode 18. Phew. No offense, but I don't want to be the guy who redesigns Nostradamus for grown-ups. I'll take a crack at the reboot. If anything, it's a good portfolio challenge. All right, Eliza's in. Tony, you too. We'll need new SFX palettes for the segments. Think Twisted Game Show meets Vine Chaos. Already on it. I've got a synth pack labeled Mental Breakdown Carnival. This is so surreal. One half of the studio is trying to teach kids how to count jelly beans, and the other half is inventing edgy puppet therapy segments. Welcome to Curious Pictures. Let's just hope the reboot doesn't crash and burn before we even finish the pitch. That's the spirit. Now somebody find me a voice actor who sounds like a tired ex-child star with a grudge. And so the studio divided, one group finishing Umizoomi episodes, while the other tried to birth Crashboxers into a world that may not have been ready. As the development for Crashboxers moved forward, a wave of dramatic changes overtook the reboot concept, reshaping it into something almost unrecognizable from the beloved original. First and foremost were the character redesigns. The quirky, oddball robots from the original show were now reimagined as human-like, slightly exaggerated adult characters. Older, edgier, and redesigned to fit a modern, cynical tone. Their appearances were altered to reflect their new roles in a digitalized, app-based society. Gone were the whimsical, claymation-style faces. In their place were slick, almost uncanny digital avatars with exaggerated features meant to satirize aspects of modern adulthood. Their ages were no longer ambiguous. Each character now had a backstory tied to themes like work stress, tech addiction, burnout, influencer culture, or online misinformation. The idea was to create characters that grew up with the audience. But instead of keeping the charm and wonder of the original format, they leaned hard into darker satire and adult humor. To reflect this overhaul, the setting was completely transformed. Instead of the original grungy, gear-filled TV inside a robot's head, Crashboxers took place inside a hyper-modern Chrome laptop, a futuristic device floating through digital space. This wasn't just any laptop. It was a central hub that linked to a simulated universe of apps, each one represented as a self-contained planet. These app planets were homes to different themed areas of the show, such as one for memory games, another for logic puzzles, and one bizarrely focusing on ironic workplace survival guides. Each planet had its own aesthetic, but all were infused with metallic tones, glitch effects, and surreal humor. The original robots who introduced the games were completely removed. In their place stood AI machines, cold, chrome-bodied artificial intelligences with holographic faces, capable of sarcasm, simulated emotions, and corporate buzzwords. These machines weren't just narrators or guides. They were the rulers of the city that the characters now lived in. A neon-lit, grid-lined urban sprawl powered by algorithms, behavioral data, and notification pings. The city itself operated like a gamified workplace, where the characters struggled to earn mental currency to unlock their own segment appearances. The new format was a bold, overwhelming hybrid of social commentary, warped nostalgia, and experimental storytelling. And while the creators saw it as a daring leap forward, many others weren't sure what they were even looking at anymore. With the reboot's transformation into Crashboxers, the tone of the series shifted so drastically that it could no longer be marketed as children's entertainment. As development continued, producers quickly realized they needed to address the new direction openly, and that meant attaching viewer guidance straight from the jump. Every episode of Crashboxers began with a bold content warning screen. The following program is intended for mature audiences. Viewer discretion is advised. Rather than being educational in the traditional sense, the show now explored themes like workplace burnout, digital paranoia, identity crises in the internet age, and even subtle nods to adult relationships and mental health. The game segments, once quirky and innocent, were now packed with rapid-fire sarcasm, dark humor, and commentary that leaned heavily into millennial and Gen Z internet culture. Certain characters used language that bordered on crude, and visual gags were layered with innuendo or biting satire. Marketing for the show specifically avoided children's networks. Instead, Crashboxers was pitched to adult animation blocks on streaming services, and in some cases compared to shows like Robot Chicken or BoJack Horseman, only more experimental. Promo posters came stamped with TV-14 and occasionally TV-MA ratings depending on the episode, with warnings for language, thematic material, disturbing imagery, and suggestive content. To avoid confusion with the original Crashbox, episodes frequently included disclaimers or even cold open jokes where a character would break the fourth wall and say things like, "If you're under 13 and remember Crashbox, go rewatch that instead. We're not here to help with your homework." It was a clear message. This wasn't Saturday morning television anymore. Crashboxers had arrived, and it wasn't pulling any punches. You curious? Pictures conference room. A whiteboard reads, Crashboxers Pilot Pitch Day. Coffee cups line the table. Nervous energy fills the air as producers shuffle through papers and test footage cues on laptops. A knock on the door is heard. Okay, everyone, deep breaths. Cuppa Coffee Pictures should be here any minute. Let's stay focused. This is the big one. I've got the animatic ready and cued. Just remember, lead with the tone shift, then visuals, then we drop the segment samples. Not the other way around. I still think the mentals in the city intro might be too much for a cold open. Too late to backpedal. We agreed to go bold. They're either going to love it or implode. The door swings open. 3 representatives from Cuppa Coffee Pictures enter, wearing trench coats, dark-rimmed glasses, and wide eyes. Whoa. So this is where the Crashbox reboot magic is happening? Welcome, Jordan, Steph, and Lionel. We're thrilled you're here. We're about to take Crashbox somewhere no one expected. You mean to say somewhere weird, don't you? Weird, wild, and... well, you'll see. Crashboxers is what happens when Gen Z and digital dystopia shake hands. Cup coffee. You've got 20 minutes. Blow us away. Lights down, screen up. Let's begin. Green flashes, Crashboxers Episode 1, rebooted and rewired. Music blasts. The room falls silent except for the surreal intro visuals. The pitch has begun. Before the announcer even stepped foot on the auditorium stage to introduce the Crashboxers pilot pitch, the atmosphere was already thick with anticipation. and some confusion. The event was held in a dimly lit, mid-sized auditorium inside the Curious Pictures facility, with a futuristic tech feel. The seats were a mix of old theater chairs repurposed from a former Nickelodeon set, with some covered in branded Crashboxers throws. Each seat had a paper taped to the back that read, "Warning, mature content ahead, viewer discretion advised." On every other armrest sat a small program booklet labeled Crashboxers, the Reimagined Experience. Producers from multiple companies filed in early, including those from Cuppa Coffee Pictures, Nickelodeon Digital, and a few curious representatives from Adult Swim who had heard rumors about the reboot's tone. Most had lanyards, but a few industry outsiders who somehow got in were escorted to the far back row. There were rules posted on the double doors at the entrance, stating, "No cameras or recording devices. Please turn off all phones during the pitch. No interruptions during screenings. Q&A only after the announcer closes." Meanwhile, interns whispered about how one executive had already expressed concerns over the humor being too out there, and another said they hadn't seen anything this bizarre since Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared. A low, glitchy remix of the original Crashbox theme played in the background, distorted and echoing through the space. As the lights dimmed further, the murmurs faded. Then came the heavy footsteps from behind the curtain. The announcer was just about to speak. The curtain parted just enough for a figure in a long coat to emerge, boots thudding with theatrical weight. A spotlight flickered overhead, briefly catching the shimmer of a metallic Crashboxers logo pinned to their lapel. The announcer stepped forward, lifted the mic, and let the silence stretch just a second too long. "Ladies and gentlemen," they began, voice low and modulated through a vocoder effect, "welcome to the Reawakening." A few scattered claps broke out, but quickly died under the weight of tension. This is not a reboot. This is not a sequel. This is Crashboxers, reimagined. The room stayed hushed. Somewhere near the middle, a producer from Cuppa Coffee leaned toward the Nickelodeon Digital rep beside her. "Did you hear about the Unstable Fables segment they added?" she whispered. The Nickelodeon rep didn't look away from the stage. "Just rumors. But if it's as off-kilter as they say, we're going to have calls from standards and practices by morning." 2 rows back, an Adult Swim exec chuckled softly, nudging their assistant. "This might be the only pitch all year that actually weirds me out. That's a good sign." The announcer continued, pacing slowly. "This project challenges format, questions memory, and weaponizes nostalgia." Backstage, the creators huddled around a monitor, watching reactions. One of them, a tall man in a faded Crashbox hoodie, muttered, "If they don't walk out in the first 10 minutes, we've played it too safe." A younger co-creator, nervously twirling a lanyard, replied, "We're about to find out if traumacore edutainment is a genre anyone actually wants." On stage, the announcer raised a hand. "Viewer discretion is not just advised, it is required. Let the learning begin." The screen behind them flickered to life with a jagged burst of static. As the announcer stepped off stage and the lights dropped to pitch black, the first crackles of distortion hit the speakers. Sharper this time. The screen buzzed violently to life with the Crashboxers logo, glitched and warped, forming and deforming in time with a pulsing bass drop. The familiar Crashbox jingle was there. Barely. Buried under layers of noise, reversed samples, and what sounded like an AI voice mumbling half-remembered trivia. Then the warning hit. The following program is intended for mature audiences. Viewer discretion is advised. Red text. Black background. A mechanical sigh followed. Cut to black. Then the intro sequence began. A sweeping shot across a digital void revealed the Chrome laptop. Sleek, pristine, but pulsing like a living organism. It hovered silently in space before snapping open with an ominous click, revealing a screen filled with apps orbiting like planets, each one flickering with data and static. The camera dived in hard, rocketing toward an app marked crashcore.exe. The visual slammed into a digital cityscape, Crash Grid, a hyper-modern metropolis where surveillance drones zipped overhead and neon signs blinked with phrases like "optimize yourself," "gamify your grind," and "upgrade or be forgotten." Instead of the colorful robot hosts of the original show, the intro showcased the new main characters. Mags, a burnt-out ex-edutainer turned glitch streamer, eyes always scanning for validation metrics. Byte, a conspiracy-obsessed data hoarder who works a fake job at a virtual think tank. Penny Control, a self-care productivity coach whose advice is riddled with passive-aggressive nihilism. Lex.ez, a hyper-intelligent AI assistant who keeps glitching between helpful and hostile. Each character got a brutal 10-second vignette. Mag screaming into a ring light while her stream crashes. Byte stapling together screenshots of targeted ads, muttering, "They're watching." Penny Control's phone vibrating nonstop as she smiles through a breakdown. Lex.exe hovering midair, surrounded by code, saying flatly, "Don't worry, you're the product now." The title card finally hit like a brick wall. Crashboxers, rendered in a jagged chrome font that looked like it was breaking apart as you watched. Silence. Then the first segment launched without fanfare. The screen glitched and transitioned to a fake in-universe app tutorial titled Burnout Bingo. A cold, synthetic narrator intoned, "Welcome to Burnout Bingo, the only workplace game where no one wins, and everyone feels like they're failing in high definition." As a distorted laugh track echoed faintly, the camera zoomed into a cubicle maze populated by dozens of digital avatars twitching through repetitive tasks. One of them turned to the screen, hollow-eyed. "You ever cry at your desk and call it a coffee break?" Laughter again, but now mixed with static. Back in the audience, there was an uneasy shift. The Adult Swim rep leaned forward, eyes wide. "Okay, this is either brilliant or absolutely unairable." The Nickelodeon digital exec exhaled slowly. I don't know what we're watching, but I can't look away." Crashboxers had made its entrance, and nothing was sacred anymore. The segment cut to a moody, violet-tinted filter over Crash Grid's cafe district, the Java update. A neon sign blinked above the entrance, now serving existential dread since V3.1. Inside, synth jazz crackled from a faux vinyl player, and steam curled from mugs shaped like brain icons. At a dim corner booth sat Dora Smarmy, no longer the peppy game show hostess. She wore a flowing black top, sleek black jeans, silver-rimmed glasses, and a wide-brimmed hat that dipped over her sharply straightened hair. Her voice was still sing-songy but slower now, like she was permanently 5 seconds from saying something sarcastic. Across from her was Jumpin' Johnny Jumble, now older, more subdued. He wore a slightly wrinkled blue tuxedo with a silver lapel, his once wild pompadour now slimmed and streaked with gray. He looked like a lounge singer who'd escaped from a corrupted audiobook. He stirred his coffee, watching the cream swirl like a dying galaxy. I still can't believe we're doing this. What, dating? Or sitting in a reality sim that keeps glitching my muffin into a Bluetooth speaker? Little column A, little column corrupt data B. A flicker passed between them as their avatars shimmered slightly. Just a crash grid feature. Or maybe nerves. I gotta admit, I thought you'd be too evolved for an old trivia jockey like me. Please, you're the only person here who still uses sarcasm instead of irony. That's practically vintage. Well, I was vintage before it was cool. You, though? You're still terrifyingly sharp. That's not a compliment, Johnny. That's a warning. A server bot rolled by and beeped. Flirt detected. Would you like to enable couple mode? Both groaned in unison. If we go couple mode, does it mean I start dreaming in hashtags again? Only if we let it sync our playlists. Last time it tried to match my protest poetry with your auto-tuned voicemail demos. They paused, sipping glitchy coffee as pixelated rain softly streaked the digital windows. I missed this. You. Whatever this is. Yeah, me too. Weird, isn't it? We spent our prime yelling at kids through screens. Now here we are, yelling at each other over simulated caffeine. At least this time, we're getting paid in emotional vulnerability instead of brain cell tokens. They both laughed. Real laughter this time. Warm, tangled with something old and maybe a little hopeful. Don't get used to this, Jumble. I'm still judging your logic skills from episode 4. Fair. And I'm still recovering from that time you broke the fourth wall and my self-esteem in the same sentence. They clinked mugs, steam merging in the glitch-lit air. Somewhere in the background, a jazz remix of the Crashbox theme hummed in minor chords. This wasn't the reboot anyone expected, but somehow it was the moment that made sense. Back in the auditorium, the screen faded to black as the segment ended, lingering just long enough for the silence to thicken. Then came the murmurs. A Cuppa Coffee producer leaned forward in her seat, eyebrows nearly at her hairline. Was that a romantic subplot between those two? The Nickelodeon digital rep beside her blinked a few times. I think it was, and I kind of loved it. But also, what timeline are we in? 2 rows up, the Adult Swim exec was already jotting notes into their phone. That cafe scene, the tone shift was surgical. And did you catch the serverbot's couple mode line? That's satire gold. Their assistant, still wide-eyed, whispered, "Is this still Crashbox, or are we watching a soft launch for a dystopian rom-com spin-off?" Farther back, a younger producer whispered to their friend, "That's Dora Smarmy. I used to scream when she came on screen. Now she's giving." Emotionally repressed villain era. I'm not mad. Another voice chimed in, a little louder. Jumpin' Johnny Jumble looks like he aged into a synthwave playlist, and I respect it. Up near the back row, one of the industry outsiders who snuck in muttered, "Okay, real talk? I did not have melancholic robot dating metaphors on my reboot bingo card." Someone from marketing scribbled into a notebook, "Pitch merch, don't make it couple mode mugs." Then, a brief burst of static hit the screen again, just enough to silence the room. The glitchy voice of the announcer returned. Segment 2, Misinformation Mansion, where every truth is a little off. The room collectively leaned in, but now there was a shift in the energy. People weren't just watching out of curiosity anymore. They were invested, and maybe a little concerned. The segment glitched and melted into a flickering transition of spinning top hats, cracked clown masks, and old TV test patterns. The digital haze cleared to reveal the interior of a dingy pop-up diner booth styled like a vintage carnival tent. Only now it was wedged between buildings in a forgotten alley of crash grid. Neon signs buzzed above the striped canopy. The Jargon Wagon, home of retired gimmicks. Inside, seated just a few tables behind Dora and Johnny, was a man in a faded red and yellow pinstripe vest. His top hat was frayed, and his smile only half fake. It was the Carnival Man, the former overzealous host of Poop or Scoop, now weathered and hunched. His voice still carried that pitchman lilt, though it cracked around the edges like an old vinyl. He sipped from a chipped mug of something labeled legal clown juice, then leaned forward to speak to a small floating camera drone in front of him, which had interview mode blinking in blue. Back in the day, you couldn't flip a dial without catching me shouting poop or scoop from some glittery trash can. Now, I host exclusive exposés for the Curious Carousel, Crash Grid's only circus for discarded IP. He gestured broadly, eyes still twinkling with that showbiz fire. But you didn't come here for nostalgia, did ya? Nah. You want to know where they went. The others behind him? A projected collage flickered. Pixelated images of old Crashbox characters. Dirty pictures, Captain Bones, Here We Are, all glitching, flickering, their faces distorted by time and poor compression. Carnival Man? Retired, sure, but not by choice. See, when Crashbox got unplugged, there was no soft landing, no pension, no Robot Hall of Fame. One day you're teaching vocabulary through scat jokes. The next you're out of RAM and out of relevance. He leaned in close to the drone now, voice low. Take Word Shake. Remember her? Used to juggle letters like they were hot potatoes? She's on update probation now, caught teaching banned acronyms in the undernet. Last I heard, she was trading vowels for ad space. He tapped the side of his mug. And Captain Bones? Poor guy thought pirates were timeless. Turns out, no one wants a skeleton yelling about possessives in the age of cryptogrammar. He squats near the Grammar Gulch subway servers now, tells riddles for spare bits. He looked over at Dora and Johnny's table, where they were pretending not to listen, but failing. Hey, Smarmy. Jumble. You two are the lucky ones. You got the makeover. The new scripts, but the rest of us, we're just artifacts in a format nobody archives. Johnny turned around slightly, meeting his eyes. Come on, man, it's not like we asked for a rebrand. I didn't even get a say in the blue tux. Yeah, and don't pretend you wouldn't jump back into the spotlight if Crash Grid gave you a flashy reboot segment. Flashy don't mean safe. Not here. They reboot ya, they own ya. Ask the Math Meltdown twins. They got recoded into fintech avatars. Now they sell crypto-based quizzes to confused teens. One of them speaks only in NFT references. I warned them about getting sponsored by Algorithmics. They thought it was evolution. It was erasure. The camera drone blinked red out of storage. The carnival man chuckled bitterly and pushed it aside. Anyway, that's showbiz in the age of metadata. You either get reformatted or you get forgotten. He tipped his dusty top hat, stood, and shuffled toward the back alley exit, his coat fluttering behind him like a tired flag. Back at the booth, Dora took a long sip from her mug and muttered, half to Johnny, half to herself. We didn't just outgrow the show. We outlived it. Johnny didn't answer. He just looked at the empty space where the carnival man had been. And for a brief, unspoken moment, neither of them felt rebooted. They just felt real. The scene dissolved into static, then sharpened into a moody grayscale exterior of a towering brutalist-style building labeled Variety Analytics Agency in sharp sans serif letters. Surveillance drones hovered silently overhead. The camera zoomed in on the street level, where two familiar figures stood beneath a flickering street lamp. Lenz McCracken, older now, wore a beige trench coat with fraying cuffs and oversized, cracked glasses. His once rapid-fire speech was slower, deliberate, and tinged with weary wit. A camera lens hung from his neck, now more symbolic than functional. Opposite him stood Detective Variety, still in his signature brown fedora and tie, though his coat was darker, sleeker. He had traded his clipboard for a glowing data tablet and a stylized badge embedded in his lapel. His mustache was still glorious, though flecked with gray. They stared at each other in silence for a moment. Well, look what the glitch dragged in. Detective Variety. Still reading faces like fortune cookies? And you, McCracken. Still chasing pixels and calling it journalism? Journalism's dead, Variety. These days, I just document the descent. Fitting, because I've been profiling suspects who don't even exist anymore. A hovercar passed, projecting ads for memory scrubs and biometric firewalls. The street buzzed with data noise. You know, back in the day, we were just trying to teach kids how to identify shady characters and track mugshots. Funny how that skill's more useful now than ever. Problem is, the suspects evolve. They don't leave trails, they leave impressions. And half the time, they're AIs in trench coats. Like us. A moment of silence passed between them. Maybe it's time? For what? For a joint case. You bring the lens, I bring the method. One last rundown before the grid deprecates us for good. You sure your agency won't blacklist you for collabing with a deprecated narrative device? They already did. I just haven't updated yet. Then let's give them a cold case they can't ignore. They bumped fists, awkwardly, like men out of their own time. The screen glitched once more, framing them in a still shot as the grayscale drained into deep, digital amber. Voice oak, glitchy and dry. Old tools, new crime. Mugshots just got complicated. The screen crackled out. The screen rebooted with a harsh, static hiss, then stabilized into a shot of a lavish penthouse office suite, high above the neon-smeared skyline of the crash-grid city. The room was grotesquely opulent. Velvet curtains, gold-trimmed furniture, and a grotesque taxidermy display of mutated zoo animals with neon eyes. The camera pushed in through the window to reveal a massive desk, behind which sat the revolting slob. But he was no longer the oozing, slack-jawed mess from the original show. He still wore the same food-stained undershirt, now ironically tailored into a silk bathrobe, and had wiry gray hair swept back in greasy tufts. His stomach had its own chair, and his slippers were encrusted with faux rubies. He sipped loudly from a mug labeled "Stink Rich" and belched with authority. Across the room knelt Eddie Bull, older now, with a balding head, crooked back, and dressed in a corporate branded janitor jumpsuit with the logo, Fauna Futures, Inc. His wide eyes were dulled by years of handling genetically engineered pets and PR disasters. He held a broken smart feeder in one hand and a mop that oozed purple gunk in the other. Revolting slopper now, with a gravelly snarl. You call that clean, Bull? I could lick that corner and still taste last week's failure. Ha! I just sanitized it with the probiotic sludge, sir, and I double-checked the... Silence! You don't double-check, Eddie. You double-disappoint. If I wanted incompetence, I'd hire a focus group. He tossed a gold-plated banana peel onto the floor. It bounced off Eddie's forehead. Pick that up. From off-screen, a familiar voice cut in. Sharp, clear, and unmistakably smug. Narrator lady. Ah, the revolting slob. Once a humble grotesque dwelling in filth and nonsense, now a wealthy grotesque, dwelling in more filth and corporate spite. The camera zoomed out to reveal the narrator, now embodied as a sleek, stylized holographic avatar hovering in the air, still in her prim blouse, glasses gleaming, eyes narrowed in sardonic amusement. Children. Oh wait, sorry. Viewers. You might remember Dear Eddie Bull as the endlessly curious animal lover who asked innocent questions about porcupines. Now he asks where the pension plan went. She floated down between the two men, unnoticed by the slob, whose attention was on dipping his fingers into a tub of luxury pudding and flinging some at a passing intern. And the slob? Well, his vocabulary has improved. His manners, however. The slob snarled again, now standing to full height, looming over Eddie with dripping pudding fingers. You vaulting Phoebe! You work for me, Bull. You feed my crypto cats, you polish my litter vaults, and you scrape every crusty corner of my empire. Or I'll have you reassigned to chimp behavioral analytics. Capish? Eddie looked like he wanted to cry. The narrator floated beside him, arms crossed. But even as the world changes and reboots grow crueler, one thing remains certain. Bullies smell the same, even if they bathe in champagne. She turned directly to the camera. So what have we learned, dear audience? Money doesn't buy class. The past never stays buried. And revolting slob? Still revolting. The screen glitched briefly as a distorted jingle began to play in the background, an ironic remix of the original "ooh" catchphrase, now layered with cynical lounge music. Cut to black. The screen flickered back on, cutting to a desolate coastline under an overcast digital sky. Waves made of shimmering code crashed softly against rusting metal rocks. Moored just off the shore was a massive, crumbling pirate ship, half sunken, its sails torn, and neon graffiti scrawled across the hull that read, 404 treasure not found. On the deck stood Captain Bones, older and slumped, with cracked bones patched together by mismatched prosthetics and memory foam. His voice had lost its thunder, though he still clutched his old golden hook. A single glowing parrot, now a drone with feathers made of light, hovered quietly on his shoulder. 'Tis not the treasure we lost, but the crew, the lessons, the joy in mathing with mischief. He leaned against the splintered mast, looking out toward the digital horizon. Used to be, a lad could misplace a number and still find laughter in the gaps. Now it's all algorithms, endless calculations, and no one laughing but the machines. A low rumble interrupted the silence. The waves began to surge, not with water, but cascading blocks of binary. From the sky descended a bizarre, retrofitted submarine shaped like a glowing neon brain. Speakers mounted to the sides, blaring an electronic remix of steel drum music. Out popped the Jamaican man from Think Tank, now older as well, with silver dreadlocks tied under a glowing head wrap and wearing a stylized neural surf suit. He stood atop the vessel with arms spread. Bones me brethren. Still clinging to that old boat, eh? Still crashing into my piece after all these years, are ye? Only thing crashing today is memory, my friend. Your ship, she's a fossil in a future that's already forgotten her name. She's still afloat. That's more than I can say for the game segments they buried without a funeral. The submarine hovered closer, lowering itself onto the deck with a hydraulic hiss. We were teachers once, Bones. Guides, now we're remnants. But maybe, just maybe, if we collided loud enough, they'll hear the echo? They locked eyes. Two relics, weathered by reboot after reboot. The submarine's engines began to hum ominously as glitch lightning crackled in the distance. Brace yourself, Captain. I'm not here to sink you, but the sea might. Bones sighed. stood tall, and drew his rusted sword. Then let's make it one last lesson they'll never forget. The screen cracked into a stuttering freeze frame just as the bow of the submarine tipped into the ship's deck. The impact was inevitable. Static. The screen flickered back from static, and an eerie silence filled the auditorium. Then, slowly, softly, a piano note. Melancholic. Familiar, yet warped. A spotlight appeared in the void, illuminating the aged, reimagined Captain Bones, standing beside the wreckage of his ship. He took a breath. Captain Bones singing low and gravelly, "We were legends of learning," in a box full of sparks. More lights flicked on, one by one, revealing other Crashboxers characters, now older, redesigned in their surreal adult forms. Lens McCracken, trench coat tattered but proud. Detective Variety, tablet glowing dimly in his hand. Dora Smarmy, hair sleek, eyes distant, her hat low over her gaze. Jumping Johnny Jumble in his faded tux, snapping quietly to the rhythm. The revolting slob, seated on a gaudy throne of spoiled luxuries. Eddie Bull, mop in hand, voice shaking but strong. The narrator, floating holographically above them, conducting with a subtle smirk. We taught with riddles, taught with slime, and made some laughs with every rhyme. But time moves fast, and games grow old, and warm clay hearts can still grow cold. They walk together now through a shifting set made of broken app logos and pixelated memories. The background changed from the original show's brain interior to the cold, sterile city of Crashboxers. The joy we had was never fake, but the world got loud and hearts did break. We changed our clothes, we changed our tone, but growing up feels so alone. The mess gets deeper when you hide, but growing means you show your slime with pride. So don't forget the math we learned or the gears that our heads once turned. We grew, we cracked, we digitized, but lessons live where hearts are wise. Spotlights now circled the audience, revealing confused, teary-eyed faces. Some producers looked stunned. A few Adult Swim reps stared blankly, unmoving. A couple Nickelodeon digital staff had heads in their hands. An executive from Cuppa Coffee Pictures muttered something about it being too raw. Others simply watched in silence, eyes wide, faces pale. Then, from the back row, a soft voice started to hum the melody. Another joined, and another. The audience began to sing. Not all of them. Some were still angry. Some walked out, but others, nostalgic, rattled, yet entranced, sang through it. All! It's trauma, yes, but it's truth as well. We came from joy, now stories swell. So plug us in, don't press rewind. We're Crashboxers. And we're redesigned. As the final note echoed into silence, the screen faded to black. The screen buzzed softly, then pulsed back to life with a silvery glow. A sleek chrome robot, humanoid in shape but with geometric limbs and a translucent faceplate flickering with emotionless expressions, stepped into frame. Its voice was calm, modulated, genderless, and corporate. This concludes your Crashboxers mental sync session. Today's lesson: growing up is messy, memories distort. But evolving doesn't mean forgetting, only understanding the cost of change. Hold on to the lessons, let go of the illusions, and remember, it's okay if you don't have all the answers anymore. Behind the robot, holograms of the other AI figures began to flicker on screen, each one styled uniquely to match different apps, glitched realities, or broken learning modules. In perfect, synchronized monotone, they all stated, "All robots. Goodbye. See you next time." The screen glitched once, then faded to black. A modernized remix of the original Crashbox theme began to play. Electronic blips, distorted robotic laughter, and a heartbeat-like bass line pulsed under the melody. The familiar notes echoed faintly beneath layers of synth and fragmented sound bites from the episode. Over glitching static, Crashboxers, a reimagined experience. Developed by Curious Pictures Digital Labs, in collaboration with Lost Signal Media. Executive producers M. Grissom, T. Hollis, S. Devane. Original concept, HBO Family. Reboot, creative director A. Wexler. Voice cast, music remixed by Null Codec Audio. As the credits ended, a single frame of the original Crashbox logo, flickering and corrupted, appeared for just a moment. Then silence. screen black. As the final note of the modern Crashbox theme faded into silence, the auditorium remained still for a moment, like the crowd was collectively processing what they'd just experienced. Then, scattered applause. Hesitant at first, a few claps from the back, then louder, uneven, uncertain. Eventually, it settled into a respectful but somewhat bewildered round of applause. The kind you give when you're not sure if you witnessed genius, chaos, or both. The house lights clicked back on with a soft hum, revealing a room filled with furrowed brows, murmured commentary, and hushed debates. People were already reaching for phones they'd powered down, some whispering into them, others frantically typing notes. Jennifer Toomey, a sharp-eyed Adult Swim executive in a layered black jacket and tinted glasses, stood up halfway through the fourth row. She clapped twice, more thoughtfully than enthusiastically, before adjusting her lanyard and turning to the two producers beside her. Well, that was a ride. You deucer number one. You stayed till the end. That's a good sign. I stay for everything. The question is, do I schedule a follow-up or a mental health check? They chuckled. Behind them, a Nickelodeon digital rep whispered something to their assistant, clearly rattled. A Cuppa Coffee producer shook their head and muttered, "We couldn't get away with half of that in Canada." Producer number gesturing to the exiting crowd. Look at them. They're talking, processing. That's all we wanted. It's bold, rough around the edges, but something's here. It's not nostalgia, it's a mirror, and it's cracked. A few interns gathered at the back near the double doors, watching as the room slowly cleared. Some industry outsiders who had been seated in the last row looked dazed, one of them murmuring, "I thought this was a kids' show." As people shuffled out, they passed the now flickering sign on the doors. Warning, mature content ahead, viewer discretion advised. Some took pictures of it before leaving. Others just walked out in silence, minds full, unsure of what Crashbox had become, but curious enough to wonder what would come next. Got it. Here's a long... So, that was Crashboxers. If you're feeling a little stunned, a little unsure, maybe even a little uncomfortable, that's kind of the point. This wasn't just a nostalgia trip. It was a reflection, a confrontation, a question mark dressed up in glitchy visuals and broken learning games. What you just watched isn't for kids. And honestly, it might not even be for all adults. It's for the in-between, for the ones who grew up on lessons that didn't prepare them for everything that came after. For the people who remember the smell of VHS plastic, the hum of CRTs, and now wake up with burnout, bad algorithms, and harder questions than Crashbox ever asked. Crashboxers is a reimagined experience. Strange, satirical, sometimes dark, but never hollow. It dares to ask what happens to educational icons when they grow old, when they glitch, when they try to stay relevant in a world that moved on without them. It's not about answers anymore. It's about surviving the questions. Thanks for watching, and if you stuck around this long, maybe you're exactly who this was made for. See you next time.